can you be a little slow?
Okay. Was there something specific you could not follow, or?
No, the way you were writing the proofs and all that. So maybe I don't know what was that.
But did you try to download the PDF or the video and try to see that?
Yeah. But during the live lecture, I was not able to follow through.
Okay. All right. Okay. Anything else? Anyone else? So, as I outlined, the purpose of this first few lectures where we bring in axioms on R are that you have to be aware that we need to do such things before we finally accept everything and think of formulation of mathematics is a very, everything which is axiomatic and everything proven and so on and so forth. Okay. So, we won't need too much of work on this, but one or two questions where you need to answer some things I will try to create and send you. Okay. So today we move to discussion about sequences of real numbers. Okay. Perhaps in school you must have first done series and then come to sequences, but as I had outlined, historically series came first and then sequences maybe, but especially when we are formulating this in a formal way and writing proofs and theorems and so on and so forth, statements, it's logically better to first talk about sequences and then say, okay, series, if you have a sequence and if you take partial sums, then what happens? That's a new sequence you get. Okay. All right. So we'll come to series later, but first we'll come to share. Yeah, so I hope you all are familiar with the notion of a function from one set to another. Okay.
Sir, sorry, but your screen share started and it got disconnected again.
Now it should have come, right?
Sir, the Zoom broadcast thing is coming, but we can't actually, yeah, it's working.
Yeah. All right. So, you have two sets A and B. We think about a function from the set A to the set B. Okay. And we will not, so some course may do it more generally and so on and so forth, but we will be interested in, for now at least, where A is the set of natural numbers or positive integers 1, 2, 3, etc., etc. Countable infinite set, all positive integers. Start with 1 and then keep increasing by 1. So, and when B is this set R that we have axiomatically created. Okay. So, and then this we write as A sub n to connect it to the terminology or notation that you have been familiar with in the school. Okay, A sub n. And in the school, you did summation A sub n equal to 1 to infinity. But we will first look at a sequence an itself. So the an is called a sequence. And formally, what is a sequence? Sequence is a function from set of natural numbers to the real numbers. For every integer n, positive integer n, you get a real number a sub n. And that is what we call the sequence. Okay. And you can think about any number of examples. So this is one example. This is another example, 1 over n. There's funny things here. Yeah, Bn equal to 1 over n is another example. You can create your own examples. Okay, Cn equal to 1 over n if n is even, equal to n square if n is odd. Okay. Now, you're saying, what kind of sequence is this? Well, it's a sequence. What kind of it comes later? So sequence doesn't have to be given by the same formula for every n. Okay, the formula can be different for different n's. You may not even have a formula. You can write whatever. Okay, so for example, it is equal to 1 if n is prime, equal to 0 otherwise. Of course, you have to decide and fix a convention whether 1 is treated as a prime number or not. This may differ from book to book or teacher to teacher. But if I ask a question on this, I will not keep it vague. I will keep as it is. We'll define that. Okay. Main thing is that if you look at it, each of these cases, the function n is being defined by a formula. Fn is n square, Fn is 1 over n. Fn is equal to 1 over n if n is even, Fn equal to n square if n is odd, and so on. Fn equal to 1 if n is prime and 0 otherwise. Okay. So, how you describe f or how do you describe a sub n is up to you. Once it is described, that gives you a sequence. Okay, and the given two sequences, we can create new sequences. So if and so if you take a sequence, then it is sometimes convenient to put it inside curly braces, or when you want to be more precise, an n bigger than equal to 1, things like this. So you have a sequence an and you have another sequence bn. Now you can do various things. You can write cn equal to an plus bn. This gives you a new sequence for all n. An times bn, this gives you another sequence. If you want to divide an divided by bn, then you have to ensure that bn is not 0. So either it should be given that bn is not 0, or it should be you bring in if bn is not 0, equal to 1 otherwise. So it's not that an by bn you can define only when bn is not 0. All entries are non-zero. But if some entries are 0, you have to give some alternate form. What is it that you want this ratio to be equal to? You can call it equal to 1, equal to 0, equal to 22, equal to -1. It's up to 1. So what is a sequence? Sequence is a function from natural numbers to real numbers. Right now, we are only talking of real sequences. Then more complicated things can come later. but we start with real sequences, and for every n, you should have one way of describing what is your an. And you can also do, so an is a sequence, I'm continuing that thread, okay. So I can define, say, yn is equal to a1 up to an divided by n. So in my new sequence yn that I'm defining, the nth term, you take the sum of the first 10 terms and take it divided by n. So average in the first 10 numbers in your original sequence. This is also a valid sequence. Okay. So, and you can cook up your own way of transforming one or two sequences into a new sequence. And one of the most important properties that we need to study about sequences is as n becomes large or as n tends to infinity, does an, the sequence an or the sequence yn or whatever is our sequence, does it converge or does it come close to any given value? If so, we call that limit exists and it comes close to such and such a number, and if not, you say that it doesn't converge. Okay, so if an comes close to a number alpha, as n becomes large, we say so. You would have seen that if you are treating numbers only as decimal expansions and you want to define what is 1 over 3 or compute what is 1 over 3. Okay? So decimal expansion with all our writing is only finitely many. Dot, 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 we can write for our thinking, but if you want to write it down exactly, then you can only write finitely many, right? So you can then say that, 0.33333. So an is equal to 0.3333 n number of times. This gives you a sequence. This sequence, as n becomes large, is coming close to a number. It is coming close to whatever is 1 by 3. Because 3 times these can come close to 1. So an equal to 0.33333 written n times is coming close to 1/3 of that. Whichever way you understand it, okay, this notion of convergence, without explicitly talking about it, is part and parcel of approximations. And in computation of historically, and in history, I'm going back hundreds of years, sine, cosine, etc., and which were needed for calculations of weather and various such things. So the notion of computing approximately a number has been there even without it got formally defined. Now we are trying to formally define what do we mean by convergence. We are going to call this an converges to alpha, and what do we mean by it? In school, you would have been given some definition or just some statement that so on and so forth. People coming from different boards, different universities, different states, there may be terminologies, may be different terminologies, meanings may be different. But we need to formalize and commit together to some new thing, okay? Something which we will continue to use in the rest of your study of mathematics, be it at CMI or elsewhere, okay? Later. So this notion, an coming close to alpha, we need to define. As I already mentioned earlier, that till about 150 years ago or maybe 170 years ago, they did not think the need to define what do we mean by comes close. It's if in language you say comes close, you understand what it means, and that was good enough. And that was good enough for computing sines, cosines, and talk about weather, talk about various such things. Okay. So, but for formal way of doing mathematics, we need to define what do we mean by coming close, and that terminology is what is limit. And several of you may have seen this, of course. An comes close to alpha is notationally is written this way, and I'm sure your class 12 exam somewhere or the other would have used these notions. We need to formally define it. Now, some of you again may have seen this definition that this converges to this if so for all epsilon there exists an n such that an minus alpha absolute value is less than epsilon for all n bigger than equal to n. So if you increase your number n, index n large enough, after some point, am and alpha are as close as you want.
Sir, it should be m, right? There exists m greater than equal to 1.
No, there exists an n bigger than equal to 1 such that am minus alpha is less than epsilon for all m bigger than equal to n. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. So for every epsilon, there is a number n such that from that n onwards, so an plus 1, an plus 2, and dot, dot, dot for all after that. So, for example, if epsilon is, say, 0.01, you check some, I'm not putting up what is my an, but you could say that the corresponding n equal to 10,000 works. What does it mean? That if you take index n which is greater than equal to 10,000, then an minus alpha is less than 0.01. And if n equal to 10,000 works, and anything above this will also work. So there is no unique about there exists n. We are not trying to say what is the smallest n for which it will work. If some problem it is needed, it will be said explicitly. Here, we do not say what is the best n available. Any n will do. As soon as you can produce one n, that is enough. Okay. So, if my an is 1 minus n square, okay, 1 minus 1 over n square, and epsilon equal to 0.001. So now, firstly, as n becomes large, we can guess. I'm sure in class 12 you would have done such examples. So 1 by n square is converging to 0 or coming close to 0. So an will be coming close to 1. So alpha is 1. Now, if you want to formalize this, so am minus alpha will be equal to 1 by m square. So we would want 1 by m square to be less than epsilon. So m square to be bigger than 1 by epsilon. So this way you can roughly calculate what your n should be. Okay, and write that down. So, firstly, let me know if some of you had not seen this so-called epsilon n kind of a definition, or has all of you seen it before? You can put it in chat. I'm trying to now open the chat, or you can put it in, you can orally tell me if some of you have not even seen this way of writing the limit definition. So with no replies, I assume that it has been covered. Whether you understood it completely, why do we say it, etc., etc., I'm not asking. So you are seeing this. Yeah, somebody wants to say?
Yes, sir, we have seen.
Okay, all right. Now, let me again tell you some story with real incidents. Okay. So, by now I have interviewed people for various things, admission to an institute, admission to bachelor's, master's, PhD, job, this, that, all kinds of things, right? So, typically when you start an interview, you start with a very simple thing and try to measure how comfortable the candidate is and so on and so forth. So okay, so you have done, this is, let's say, MSc, and this is a BSc first year thing, right? Limit definition. So you said, okay, so what have you done or what did you like? Sir, the candidate says, sir, I like the limit notion. Okay, limits. Okay, so can you define limits? Candidate goes to the book, and at many places we make the candidate go to a board. So the candidate goes to the board and writes down perfectly what I have written in here. So candidate remembers and writes this down. All right. Now, sometimes we move on. Sometimes we try to test whether it is a memory effort or candidate has understood what does it mean. Okay. So one of the members in the committee could say, are you sure it is for all epsilon there exists n, or should we say there exists n such that for all epsilon? So what comes first? Okay. So the question would be, should it be for is this the correct one, or should it be there exists n such that for all epsilon positive the same statement holds, and we can interchange. We'll say that for all n there exists a epsilon positive, and so in other words, if you interchange n and epsilon, n is bigger than equal to 1, epsilon positive. So you can interchange epsilon positive and n bigger than equal to 1, or you can interchange for all and there exists. You give only one of them in the interview and ask the candidate, is the candidate very sure about what he has written, he or she has written, or the alternate thing that we have now suggested. Unfortunately, often the candidates get confused. Now, it need not necessarily mean that they have mugged it up, they have understood it, but now in an interview, you suddenly ask such a question and they get rattled. And then the quizzing goes on this part a lot more. If soon the candidate is able to convince us that no, the candidate knows it perfectly, it just got rattled, then it's fine. And not just this example. In many times, what happens is that you know it perfectly well, but if a slight tweaked example notation is given, you get confused. Is it this or is it that? You may not have memorized. You may have known exactly what it means, but how do you resolve such a thing in your mind? Okay. Now, there can be different tricks and techniques for different people, but something which I use a lot for myself, not this example, but in general, is for such critical things, I remember I connect it with some statement. Okay. And if that statement should be such, or that statement, example, whatever, so that once you remember this, you will be able to figure out that out of these 4, which is the right one. Okay. So let's say, I tell you that I claim that 1 minus 1 over square root of n converges to 1. Okay, this is my claim to you. So you say, what do you mean? I say, well, if I choose, if you choose n large enough, it will be close to 1. How close? I would say, well, that depends on you. I'm proving it to you. You tell me what will you consider close, and then I will tell you that for which n onwards it will be following that condition. So you tell me, so the claim of convergence is made by the person who is making the claim. The challenger is the one who has to choose what is the epsilon. Whatever be that epsilon, then the person who is making the claim should be able to say that, okay, from this n onwards, it is works. So if you remember this, then it is up to the challenger to question what would be considered close. So the challenger gives you an epsilon, and then the claimant is to make an n. From when on it will be closed by that the epsilon given by the challenger. If you remember this, then you will be quickly able to figure out which of these four is the right one. Okay. So first thing is the challenger gives the epsilon, and then the claimant would give from which n onwards this is going to follow. If you remember this, you will be able to figure out which of these four is the right one. Yes, only first one is correct. Yes, first one is correct, and so on. Correct. But in general, I follow these rules. Okay. So, and it could be some expression bigger than some other expression, or some expression less than equal to some other expression. In that case, I will quickly remember one example where that holds. And if I get a doubt whether it is less than or greater than equal to, I know the two expressions, less than or greater than equal to. I will use that example to resolve the tie in my mind, and say which one is the right one. Okay. So I hope you gain something from this, and you write your own examples and figure out if you can actually show convergence. Okay. And also come up with examples where convergence may not work. And our class has to end because I have to go to the meeting, but I will send you some questions about this convergence. This is one of the most important formal notation we come to. Construction of R or example, these axiomatic things of R, we will have to soon forget. Okay, we just then believe that all that we have done is fine, and once we have done it, and now we can ignore that. Okay, that works. But convergence and limits and so on and so forth, that you can't easily forget because they will be needed time and again. Okay. So in a way, it is good that today is only a half an hour. So I just defined and made some comments about this. You first start by writing some examples and actually see if convergence is working, and then try to use this epsilon delta definition, as it is sometimes epsilon n definition, as it is sometimes called, to actually conclude your answer. Okay. So let me stop here. And of course, we will be meeting on Friday. And before that, I'll send you something by this evening. I'll send you some questions for you to solve yourself. And then we'll see on Friday. Okay. All right. Sorry again that today I have to leave early, but this is CMI related matter and important. So bye for now.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.